The animals took your lands. They drove your people into the hills to scratch a living off the waiver wire. Take back the lands they stole from you. Burn every village. And burn them they did, as the Avengers lived up to their name, setting Team Phoenix ablaze this week. Who knew they weren't fireproof? After back-to-back weeks as the lowest scoring team in the league, the Chris Godwin-led Avengers popped off, taking back the weekly crown of top scorer. Welcome in, once again, to the dungeon of the Doctors of Doom, where I'm your still undefeated host and the manager of one of only 2 teams with a winning record this season, Alex the Shark Sparks. And even though the rest of our crew cannot claim such accolades, I suppose for posterity's sake I should introduce them anyway. So with me as always is the man who is so perennially late that he still hasn't made it to Vegas yet, even though the trip ended days ago. Give it up for Mitch. I'll leave after work and be there Saturday morning black. And the man that he unleashed his Avengers on last week, Vinny. All my teams lost again, Santucci. Say hello to the Doomsdayers out there, boys.
Hello.
Hey, Doomsdayers. Everybody except for Mitch. We're saying hi to everybody but Mitch this week.
Oh
I
yeah.
also didn't know the intro is factually wrong. Lowest score?
That's true. Sorry, you were the second lowest scorer.
There we
And
go.
the lowest
That's
scorer
better.
in the next week. So yes, that's technically true. But when you combine them together, you were the lowest scorer, and that just made it easier as a write-up than having to explain too much stuff.
Yeah, 2 out of my 3 wins on top scorer. So some of us actually work to get our wins in this league a little bit.
Oh, is that how it works?
I mean, when you have 3
Yeah.
wins and 2 of them are top scorers, I guess that's the way it's going to be this year.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and
Yeah.
I got a couple of quick hit points about each of the games this week. So we'll start off with me. Obviously, Fantasy D, baby. Who needs a quarterback? Can't win in this league without a quarterback. Tell that to my team. Dak does nothing, and I still managed to eke one out, taking Miles down 79 to 78. So I take my dub here. Austin picks up his first win of the season. He had said when we interviewed him that he felt like his team was better than it had looked and that it was going to get better as the season went on. But the question is it too little too late? Because he's 1-5. Professor Chaos still rolling. Matt on the streak right now, and his team's looking good. So could he be a contender after all? And then, of course, the game I referenced, I'll let you guys talk about this one a little bit without going past it too much. I do want to say the irony here is the wide receivers. Vinny gets nothing out of Harrison, gets hurt. Not only that, we saw the play that Vinny lost the game to. We were walking into Raiders Stadium, walking by a concession stand, when on TV, Vinny and I are next to each other. Chris Godwin makes the grab, breaks not 1, not 2, but 3 tackles on his way to a 55-yard touchdown. That made it an 11-point play. It would have been a 1 or 2-point play, and that is the difference in the ball game. If it was a 2-point play, Vinny wins by 1. Instead, an 11-point play, Mitch takes the W. Boys, go ahead. Feel free to chat about your game here.
And I think even harder too was like sitting there rooting for the Giants in Vegas because Nolan needed them to cover and hit the under, only for Chase Brown to like break out a garbage time 30-yard touchdown run to ice
Wait,
the game. So
You guys are such fake news. What about Chase Brown getting the easy touchdown when there was a holding on the wrong side of the line? And even all the networks are like, why are they calling a penalty on this? And the whole topic this week is how many penalties were called. And Metcalf has 3 touchdowns that have been called back. And on top of that, Barkley got his touchdown called back on a holding. So what is this fake news going on? Like,
well, you also have to realize we did not get much of a chance to watch games outside of
okay.
Yeah,
the
So
one
Chase
game.
Brown,
We were
Chase Brown had
literally-
2 touchdowns called back on offensive holding. Josh Allen had a rushing touchdown called back on a illegal formation that he had to go earn it again. And Metcalf had another toe touch that was out of bound. Metcalf should have 3 more TDs if he just had an inch smaller toe.
Yeah, see, Mitch, the irony is because we were in Vegas, we were doing stuff in the morning, and then we went to the Raider game. We didn't get to see any other games or hardly any other highlights. The one play that Vinny and I saw was the Goblin touchdown. It happened at the perfect time, right before, like we'd gotten into the stadium but hadn't gotten to our seats. It was one of those tiny like CRV TVs above a concession stand, and that's how we saw it. So that's why it was funny that one play that we saw is a difference maker, especially when you consider Godwin popped off yet again, whereas Marvin Harrison Jr., two targets, no catches, and a concussion, meaning he's out probably for at least another week. So That's
Also,
why I reference
Godwin
that.
is before this week. Godwin was the number 9 or 8 overall wide receiver. Now he's number 2. So let's not start acting like the number 2 wide receiver getting 20 points is anything crazy. My favorite part of the story is the Marvin Harrison concussion protocol. It just reminds me how far we've come. Let's rewind to 2005, 2004-5 season, week 4. I'm playing Nolan Sparks, and I'm down. Sorry, I'm up 6 points or whatever. Brett Favre gets massively concussed. Like he is not, he has no idea where he is. Goes to the sideline. They call timeout, give him a second to like get all, reorganized. And he comes back in, throws a touchdown, and then comes back out for the game. And I lose that game to Nolan.
Not only
Now
did he
come
come
full,
back out, but on the way back off the field, he asked what just happened. He did not know that
what
he
just
just threw a
happened?
touchdown. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's come full
Yeah.
circle. 20 years later, I get a snake win because they Marvin Harrison. I saw that play. It's like he looks fine, but they just wanted to do the concussion protocol and keep to it, especially with a rookie who you have a whole career in front of you. They're going to play that safe with him, and I'm like, oh, that's going to win me my week because Marvin Harrison got him
Yeah.
0. That's what I
No,
think.
it was bad. I mean, he tried to walk off the field and like fell down, like collapsed. But like Alex said, like our opportunity to watch games was oddly limited outside of sports books in Vegas. So my favorite part was, I'm not kidding, we're sitting at lunch. I watch Marvin Harrison get concussed. We don't really
Uh,
watch much of the rest of the game. We walk into the stadium, we see the Godwin touchdown. We get back to the casino, I see the Chase Brown touchdown. So it was just like, what are the chances that like the 3 plays outside of Raiders Steelers that I saw all day were something that like negatively affected my fantasy team? Honestly, I don't feel like you snaked this win. It's just super frustrating to score 101 points, be the
oh,
second highest
definitely.
scorer, and lose. I think I lost to Matt like 2 weeks ago as like the third or fourth highest scorer. Adam has 2 losses like that too. It's just one of those things. Like I don't need, like you said, like for our division, I don't need the wins, but I'm not the strongest team in the division. So to score 101, go up in breakdown and
Yeah, that's right.
in points for power ranking, only to lose a game is like, oh, that's pretty brutal. So
Speaking of being the top or second top scorer, I like how my dad decided he just didn't want to start a running back. If he had, Brian Robertson was ruled out before
18
the game
points.
started. If he had, his only other running back, Algier, 18 points on the bench. Dad would have been the top scorer this week, but he's like, nah, I don't even need another running back to beat Cameron. And he played it close. Maybe he just wanted the thrill. He's been dominating all of his opponents so much. He just wanted the thrill of a close game. He's like, nah, I'm gonna leave that guy on the bench and still beat Cam.
Well, look what
So
Cameron left on the bench.
yeah, Cameron
Joe
left Joe
Mixon.
Mixon on the bench, but that one's a little more excusable. Pollard has been playing well. Brees Hall is the guy you take in the first round as like the third overall pick or whatever. So
Yeah.
and
It's
Mixon's coming back from an injury, so like I don't. This was my overreaction that Mixon was going to lead the league in rushing, and I think he might have had he not gotten hurt, right? So like I totally understand where you're coming from, but I think there's a difference between leaving the guy coming off injury on the bench and starting the guy who's actively not playing versus the guy who is, right? You know what I mean? There's
if they're
a difference.
gonna
yeah, that
if
actually
they're gonna
reminds
run
me
him
of a
that
couple.
much, Alex. Sorry, Vinny. If they're gonna run that much, your overreaction's not far off. He still might lead the league in rushing. Go on, Vinny.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just laughing. That kind of reminded me of 2 things that like the CBS recap said. It was like it said that Nolan was folding it in because it's the second week in a row that he's set
Yeah,
incomplete
folding
lineup,
six
and
and
he's
oh.
he's 6-0, So like I thought that was hilarious. And then like in our report, it mentioned how naturally I think we talked about this during the game. Ended up not being that bad, but I could have started the Chargers over the Broncos D. But then it said if he started Ray Davis, he would have won the game. And I'm like, in what world am I starting a backup running back for a questionable running back on Monday night? So it's like 2 things that the review said that was
Well,
pretty funny.
that's why I even was coming. I was prepared mentally coming. I was like, I'm going to be nice to Vinny because I would hate to have scored 101 points. And not to mention, if they had any type of indication, that's why I first texted you in the group, in our chat or whatever. I was like, did they say anything about Gus Edwards or Ray Davis until right before? Like, you would have definitely, you could have switched. You know what I mean? Like, there
Yeah. So
was multiple
speaking of that,
opportunities.
so I don't think I talked to you about it as much, Vinny, but I talked to Chris about this a ton while we were in Vegas this weekend about who to start at running back because James Cook was questionable but practiced on Saturday. And I was sitting there this whole time and like I was like I really need to beat Miles. I don't want to lose this game, debating who to start, him versus Tracy. I ended up going with my gut and going with Tracy because I felt like A, Tracy had a good matchup because the Bengals can't stop anybody, and B, it's risky to start a guy who might not play. Sure enough, Cook gets rolled out. Had I started Cook, I lose this game. But because I went with my gut and started Tracy, I got the dub. So yeah, Vinny didn't have, you wouldn't really had a chance of like same thing. You don't know if Ray Davis is going to be the starter, going into the game because it hadn't been announced. The news on Saturday was
Right.
it was trending towards playing.
You called it.
James
That's
Cook.
what I was going to lead to. Is I was going to set that up as a question for you, Alex. How did you make that call and it ended up giving you a win? That was really well done because I didn't see anything about that. And also, just recap real quick. I was like, I'm going to be so nice to Vinny scoring 101, and then you guys are starting. I'm like, oh, they're trying to get me riled, so I'm just going to get riled. And like, because they had seen all my team plays or whatever. Like, I'm like, I'm not going to complain about any of my plays.
Intro, Mitch. I gave you props in the intro.
Yeah, but I don't want your props in the intro because then my team's cursed.
I will say I did break the curse, but see, maybe the curse is just players. That's why I only named Chris Godwin. Did you notice at the end instead of just saying the Avengers, I named Chris Godwin the Avengers so we can see if the curse still exists.
And Evans keeps going out and coming back in
because I've beaten Mitch. Mitch has beaten Vinny, and I play Vinny this week for the trifecta. And my team is looking pretty battered going into that matchup, but we'll get to that in a minute. The last game I want to touch on real fast. Penguins versus Serial Killers. Ironic for Break once again. We keep talking about how unlucky he is. The one thing he can say is at least this week, he deserved to lose with that score. It's not another week where he scores 1,000,000 points and loses. So, at least he's got that going for him.
Sylvie with the injured running back start for the second time this season as well. So that's
another person who started someone who didn't play. White ruled out before the game. Speaking of ruling out before the game, fun fact: both Break and Vinny had prop bets on Jacoby Myers scoring a touchdown, which was funny because Jacoby Myers did not play in the game and was ruled out before, and
that's terrible.
MGM would not let them cancel the bet.
Oh no!
Yep. Yeah, that was fun. It wasn't even a touchdown. I think we had him, or Break had him for a touchdown. I had him for over 50 yards receiving. So that was tough. But hey, while we're on Sylvie's team, can we just go ahead and click on Scary Terry for a second? Because I don't have the balls to do this because it just hurts my soul. Oh,
so I want to point
16,
out
11,
this,
9,
these,
17.
Weeks 1 and 2 are the weeks that Terry was on Vinny's team. Weeks 3 through 6. I also want to point out fun stat about Terry McLaurin. Do you know who leads the league in red zone targets?
He leads the league in all the targets.
He leads the league in red zone targets.
Man, that is so. I guess it just shows that all Scary Terry needed was to not be on either Mitch or my team to be successful. So
yeah, that's what it is. Now I'm figuring out collusion. I want like an investigation into that pie-in of last February because I think McLaurin was part of like Team Alex and Chris or whatever. He was definitely part of it, in on it. Like, what is this? And not only that, it's like air share too. Going to Adam's team on Ayuk, will one of you help me convince Adam he needs DJ Moore for me? Will one of you help me out with that by any chance?
Yeah, I mean,
Ayuk
is on the struggle bus right now. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think Break's team, like we talked about last week, if Taylor keeps sitting out and with Collins on IR, this team is a lot less intimidating than it was before. Like, if it's one of those where, like, if I had to play Break, this is when I'd want to be doing it. Unfortunately, it's not, but like I'd want to be playing him, this upcoming week, you know what I mean? But when his team still got these injuries and these question marks. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that moving forward.
This is like a two-part question, but I'll start it off with the first part. Just remind me it's a two-part because it kind of leads into it. This is more of a question for, I guess, Vinny, because Alex will be biased in it. It is just kind of fun. Vinny, who has a better chance of winning their division, the Sharks or the Avengers right now? So go to score standings or standings overall.
Yeah. So
basically, the question is,
before you answer, I want to point out only 2 teams in this league have winning records. That's of course the Sharks and the Sparkplugs, and only the one division has no teams with a losing record, being the Intensity division that I am atop of.
Right. So this makes the question fun.
Yeah,
for me.
I think it's got to be the Sharks just based on how good Nolan's team is. Alex having a 3-game lead. I will say, like, the last couple of weeks with Dak make me very nervous for Alex's team, if we're being honest. Like, I said this, like, the other day. Like, I thought how elementary the Cowboys offense looks this year. So I think a lot of that, I mean, and I have CeeDee Lamb in a lot of leagues. So it kind of hinges on
So
Dak and CeeDee picking it up.
I would like to point out, by the way, people keep like, well, not people, but like people like, oh man, you have the least points against. Like, yeah, the best fantasy D, and that's great. But like, I also have the 4th most points for. It's not like I'm not scoring points, right? Like,
Yeah.
I have more points than Mitchell, like overall. So it's not like I'm not scoring any points out there. So
you have 12
Yeah,
more
I
points.
would. If this was,
right, but
I
still
think
have
if
more
this was
points,
like,
right? So like
if this was like Alex at 4-2, it becomes a better discussion in my opinion. But like 6-0, his team is good. He already has a 3-game head start. I just don't see like there's a way that you can bet against that.
So the
Yeah,
question
look,
was
obviously,
basically
I don't want
Matt
to jinx
or
myself. I don't
me.
think things can happen, but I also think like it, based on the way my division is playing right now, it seems like the next best team in my division as of right now is now Matt, not Luis, and
Right.
I have a 3 game division lead on Matt, which is pretty huge. So
So
Yeah.
Matt has a better chance of catching Alex than I do, Nolan.
even if Matt and I were to have the same record at the end of the year, if I win one more division match, he can't win the division if we're tied in record, right? Like so, and he has to run the
Right.
table. So I
So basically, Nolan's gonna save you on the pie bet.
I don't think so. I still think I'm in a commanding, like I think my dad and I are in commanding positions right now to win our
Oh, for sure.
divisions. And I
Who's the best 3-3 team?
and I
You
think
can answer this one,
the
Alex.
best 3-3 team right now I think is probably Vinny, just because of the
Oof.
injuries to Break's team, which again like I don't see how you win this pie bet, but yeah, right now because
No, I'm not.
I think Miles has the third best team in his division, maybe second with Break's injuries, but assuming Break's players come back from injury, I think he's the third best team. Matt's got a big hole to dig himself out of, and you not because of your team as much as just because of how good my dad's team is. It's gonna be tough for you to win the division. So, but the wild card, however, the wild card is wide open right now because every team is pretty much in it except for Chris. I feel like. I mean, Austin, like I said, he's peaking at the right time. There's a chance he can claw his way back in it. I think Chris is completely out of it. But yeah,
So is there a
I,
world where that integrity division beats up on each other and I get the wild card? That's what I'm getting
yeah, I
at.
mean, I think
oh
so.
yeah.
I
You're
still
right there in
have,
the
I
wild
still
card
have,
spot, right? You're 3-3, right? Like you're currently tied for the wild card. Like the wild card comes down to points, right? So like right if the season were to end today, the wild card team would be Vinny.
By 20 points or whatever.
Yeah, by what is that, 17
yeah,
points?
I
17
had two
points.
65-point scores weeks. That's very promising for me that I'm still in this. How
Yeah,
many other of you guys
I
could have
had the
two
one
six?
like I had like the 153-point scoring week, and it was like brutal.
Yeah. So I guess everyone
Um,
needs to be due for their 60-point week and take an L, and then we'll see at the end. I hope. I'm hoping.
what's also kind of funny about that pie bet is that I have, score 101, lose to Mitch, and then I have you, Alex, this week, and then I have Nolan the following week. So I somehow am very involved in this pie bet at this point with the upcoming stretch of games that I have.
You
I
could
just think
put
it's
two
crazy how
losses on
much
them.
parity we have in the league right now. So like, okay, so let's take me and Dad out of it. Right, we're 6-0. We have 6 game win streaks. Look at the rest of the streaks. 2 game loss and 3 game win. These are the next two biggest streaks. At like I guess 3 game, but then it's like 1-1-1-1-2-1-1-1, and like I said, I think Chris is just completely out of it. Right, so like everyone's like waffling back and forth, win loss, win loss. It's very compact. Very very on par with everyone. So it's gonna be a great year to see who comes out on top. And again, it's ironic because we talked about kind of off air that I think there's only 5 teams in our league with positive records, like overall, like historically, and right now only one of those teams has a positive record of the 5. So like. No one's doing any favors moving that needle up. We might end up with only 3 with a positive record at the end of the season. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I do want to say, and I'm a known hater of Austin's draft strategy and his team on a couple episodes. I was actually looking at his team the other day and or yesterday, and you mentioned it kind of earlier, like where Austin said his team was on the rise. I hate that I'm playing this team in week 10. Like this team is going to destroy me. So to like put me in L like this. If Garrett Wilson can do what he did yesterday, you get Reek with Tua, you get Chubb coming back. Even if Chubb is just like an RB2 and Najee does like half of what he did last week, Kelsey does average. I mean, this is a very, very solid lineup.
Well,
And
well, I mean that's
healthy
that's what
moving
Austin
forward
said.
is healthy
Austin
moving
said he
forward
still
is
liked
very
his team when
scary.
we interviewed him. We interviewed him when he was 0-4, I think, is when we interviewed him, and he said he really liked his team. And so the only question we have is it too little, too late? I mean, I think the big
So
question marks are still going to be the same place it was before, wide receiver, right? If anything, his running backs are getting better, and that's great, but we still don't know what's going to happen with Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins and Kentua's head stay
okay.
on. And then Garrett Wilson, like, yeah, he's had 2 good games in a row, but now he just got bumped down the depth chart because we all know Devontae Adams is going to be wide receiver 1 in New York.
Yeah, so I want to play the opposite, Vinny, on here. I love all of your takes, but I'm going to have to disagree on this one. The problem is, if you go back to his team, Alex, just so I say it. So I'll say this for Austin: if you give Austin the same team next year, he might win the league. But the problem is, to Kelsey, they needed to have a losing record for Kelsey to be actually relevant. They're just going to keep resting him, resting him, resting him. They don't need him. Garrett Wilson has definitely taken a decrease. Tyreek Hill, the rumors are, what if Tua doesn't even come back this year? That's what
Yeah.
I've been reading. So, and on top of that, I think you're giving too much credit to Chubb because they're in Firehouse. They might even be getting rid of Miles Garrett in the next couple of days. So it's like and also on top of that, I've read that they're benching, they're getting out of the Winston contract legally, and I mean, not Winston, out of the Watson contract, and they're starting Winston. So, I mean, that's a whole different topic. We can see what happens to the Browns fantasy. Maybe Chubb is better with Winston there, but I would argue Chubb's might not like, yeah, and Hill too doesn't get to it back. Wilson's value decreased. Kelsey, they're just going to keep holding on to. I don't know if his team ever does start picking up till about week 10, maybe. And by that time, it's way too late.
Well, so I mean, we'll kind of transition to this then because it kind of came up with Austin having these players, but a couple of blockbuster trades, happened in the NFL this week. Devontae Adams goes to the Jets for a conditional third round pick, whereas Amari Cooper gets traded to the Bills, and they get a third and a fifth for him or whatever it was. It's like, how is Amari Cooper worth more than Devontae Adams? What games are they watching? What is happening here?
Because they knew Devontae Adams
Yeah.
wasn't going to play, right?
That's what I'm
So
saying.
they had
and I
to-
think a
It's
big
just
part of
typical
that.
Raiders management. Like, so what? Sit him on the bench. Like, if you don't want to play, sit him down.
True.
Well, I think the big part of that is that the Browns are going to continue to pay Amari Cooper's contract, where the Jets took over all of Devontae Adams' contract. So that kind of changes the amount of pick leverage that you're going to trade another team, right? Like, hey, we're going to give you a better pick, but you're going to pay the salary versus I'm going to give you this pick, but then we're going to assume all the salary.
Right.
What?
Honestly,
I found
getting
it
off of, I think we owed Devonte Adams another 82 million over the next 3 years, like 12 million for the rest of this year, and then 35. So hopefully that opens up something in the future. I don't know.
Well, that's also, it's just, you can just read the narrative of where there's, where there's flames or wherever there's fires. I've heard Crosby's, being shopped right now too. So it's just kind of like you trying to figure out where these teams are at and if they're going to sell. I think the Browns right now are in a sale, and that does not give me confidence of them running Chubb.
Yeah.
But
Speaking
from
Yeah.
speaking
Austin's
of speaking of Crosby, I mean, I don't think Crosby wants to leave or wants out, but I mean, yeah, the Raiders need to start over. We were talking about this, so we went to the Raiders game. This weekend. The Raiders got absolutely blown out. The refs were wearing Steeler uniforms, so that didn't help our situation at all. But it's funny
Oh, it was terrible.
going into the game. Normally teams introduce either the offense or the defense. The Raiders are introducing the defense, and someone asked me like, why are they introducing the defense and not the offense? It's like, well, because you can't name a player in offense. We were starting a backup QB. Our number one and number two wide receivers weren't playing. Our number one running back wasn't playing. The only offensive player that anyone might cheer for at all is our rookie tight end, right? That's the only person that people might cheer for. On defense, there was like no claps for anybody except Divine Diablo got a couple of claps, and then the crowd went nuts for Max Crosby. So it's like, that's why they introduced him last, obviously. Like, they knew the only guy in the stadium who's going to get a cheer, besides maybe Brock Powers, is Max Crosby, so we're going to introduce him last. And, he got a big roar, but that was kind of the highlight of the game for the Raiders. We had a bunch of calls go against us. We had an interception and a touchdown that were called back on some bogus penalties that were big game changers, especially the touchdown that was called back. Not only was it due to an ineligible man downfield, which had nothing to do with the pass at all, because that's normally an issue on running plays, but it cost Brake a bunch of money because he had a bet where Alexander Madison had to score 2 touchdowns, which why he made that bet, I have no idea. No one in the right mind thought he'd score 2 TDs. Brake didn't even know he wasn't the starter when he made the bet, but somehow Brake would have cashed that bet if not for that flag. So Brake was pretty salty about that, but yeah.
Yeah, it was a tough watch, and kind of just segueing off the Raiders offense. At one point in time, they had like 3 white tight ends lined up in like the wide receiver. Like one was tight, Bowers was out wide, and they had another tight end in the slot with a random like wide receiver. And I'm like, oh man, your offense is bad when you're lining up 3 white tight ends as like all your primary targets and weapons. And then a play, it was hilarious. We throw in Dylan Lobb, I think his name is, the backup running back, for like a trick play. a rookie white running back who instantly fumbles on the only touch of the game. So, yeah, it was hard to watch an offense with zero skill players. Um,
Wait, time out. The line in Vegas for Madison was already at 2 touchdowns. That's saying a lot about Madison. If
No,
he
no, no.
scores
It's
a
a, it's,
no,
it's a
touchdown.
no, no,
prop
no.
bet that Break made. Like we made a bunch of prop bets to try to like for example, Break and I both bet on the Raiders quarterback Aiden O'Connell scoring the first touchdown, which again for those who don't know how betting works, that's a rushing touchdown by the quarterback. You can't pass it in; it doesn't count because it paid 50 to 1 or whatever. So we're like, yeah, let's make that bet. Did not cash, obviously, but Jimmy
What
did
was the
cash the bet,
Madison
so I'll
prop
give
bet?
props to Jimmy, formerly Team Tacos manager. For those who watch Wheel of Destiny, I included him this year, but he had a prop bet. He needed Najee Harris, Justin Fields, and Alexander Madison to all score TDs, and all three of them did. So he did cash that, made a pretty penny, which made me feel good because I felt kind of bad. I gave him some advice to bet on the Nashville Predators, and that did not work out. So my bad on that one, Jimmy, if you're listening. But yeah, Vegas was a lot of fun. Raider game, I still had a lot of fun, even though the Raiders suck and got trashed. But still a good time. We were going to record the podcast from there, but we were missing somebody. I don't remember who. I know Vinny and I were there. I have a picture, that I'll put up when I post the video. But yeah,
Not sure who that person was,
could
but
have been anybody. All right.
go back to the wide receivers real quick. What does it say about the Bills grabbing Cooper when Stephon Diggs is 30 years old and probably better than Amari Cooper, who is also 30 years old? I'm just curious on what
You
this
know,
whole thing says about the Bills.
I think it just comes.
I thought that
Oh,
was
go ahead.
pretty interesting. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. That's what makes me think it's all salary dependent. Um, I think Cooper's going to do well in Buffalo. I still think Amari Cooper is like the worst wide receiver with the amount of statistics and recognitions that he has. Um, he's just always. I just feel like he just is a contagious dropper of the ball in clutch situations. He
Yeah, he,
explodes
I
every
mean, he
once
just
in a
can't
while to
catch,
pad
right?
the
Like
stats.
he can get open for days. He just can't catch the football. That's honestly all it comes down to with him. Yeah, I mean, no doubt Diggs is a better player. I think it just comes down to the Bills needed a wide receiver. They didn't want to keep Diggs because of maybe some on-field, off-field, whatever issues, some attitude issues. Who knows? People say different things about that. I think maybe he wasn't great for the locker room, and he was too expensive, so they let him go. They thought maybe we can do it without a star wide receiver. They've seen now that they can't. Not that they can't. I mean, they've played well, but they've seen how much a real wide receiver one can make a difference. So when they found somebody shopping around a guy like Amari Cooper for a third rounder, they jumped at the opportunity. So it makes good business sense for them because they are competing to win a championship this year, whereas the Browns clearly are back to being the Browns.
Yeah, agreed. It'll,
Is
yeah,
there
I think it's going to prop up their offense a little bit, but um, it's the only trade. I was thinking this weeks ago. I think I texted you guys like when it happened. Like I was thinking like the Bills need somebody. Who could they possibly get? I'm like, it has to be Amari Cooper. It's the only logical sense. Just how bad the Browns are. He's going to be cheap. He's somebody that's for sure on the block. And they went out and got him, and I think it's going to be good for the Bills offense. I
who
just
who gets a bigger fantasy bump, just fantasy wise? Aaron Rodgers with Devontae Adams or Allen with Cooper?
I'm going to say Rodgers just because Allen is still successful. I think Allen will now be more consistent.
I'm
But I
Gotcha.
think
gonna, I'm gonna, pick-
Rodgers
I'm gonna
gets
pick
the bigger
Rodgers just because
bump.
I have to start him this week. So I'm gonna pick him. But I think it depends, right? Like how much of Devontae Adams' injury was real. Like I know he didn't want to play, so they probably made up an injury. But like you can get in a lot of trouble for making a completely fake injury. So there's likely some sort of semblance to truth to that. There's also like if he has been holding out, how long has he not been practicing? How long does it take him to integrate with the offense? Because like yeah, Rodgers likes him, but they haven't played together in a while. And over the last couple weeks, Alan Lazard's been his boy. He's finally starting to throw to Garrett Wilson. So I think that might take some time for him to truly be super impactful. Whereas Amari Cooper, I think, can make an impact right away because the Bills are going to go from having 0 wide receivers to a half a wide receiver, which can make a difference. And it could stretch defenses because Allen can do it with his legs. But yeah, overall, I think it helps Rodgers more just because, like, from a fantasy standpoint, I think Josh Allen is going to get you the points no matter what. Whereas when, we've had a couple of bad games where we made fun of Mitch for it, but realistically, he's going to get you points no matter what. Whereas Rodgers, very up and down. 10, 11,
I hope you guys are
15.
right.
I'm sorry.
It's music to my ears, and I hope you guys are right. That's great. Speaking of trades, go to Cameron's team real quick, please, just so the audience can see it. Cameron and I have been talking for a month now. I've been trying to trade one of my three wide receivers for one of his three running backs, and I've been offering Chase Brown, Metcalf, basically everyone but Godwin. Okay, and we've been getting close to. Um, because he's got Amari Cooper now. We were getting close to Amari Cooper and like a Pollard deal for like I was gonna give him Laporta, Metcalf, Brown, and we were discussing all and all, and then he sends me back a text message after yesterday. Pollard and Mixon were going off. He's like, "This is why I hate trading, man. Sorry, because we were so close to a deal, and it looked like Pollard and Mixon and Amari Cooper's trade to the Bills." Played it way out of a chance of me getting a trade with Cameron. And I wrote back to him, I was like, no, you just like giving Vinny Jamar Chase for Deontay Foreman. He goes, I blocked that out of my memory.
So what you're saying is I should try to snake your trade and reach out to Cameron.
I was trying for the whole year because he just Joe Mixon's going back to a starting lineup or whatever, and he's not going to start Pollard or Hall in this league because there's no flex. So I knew that was eventually going to happen. So I wanted Mixon or Pollard off him, and I was willing to do like a big core trade with like anyone but Godwin and Barkley.
Well, as someone who once had the number 1, the number 3, and the number 5 fantasy running back on one team and tried to trade one of them, I can let you know from experience it doesn't work. All right.
But this is before no one even heard of Amari Cooper going to the Bills too. Like this week with Pollard having another solidified week of like 15 carries at least or whatever, Mixon looking like the top back he is, and Cooper going, like it looked like I would have fleeced Cameron. And this is he wrote that's you know why I hate this is why I hate trading. I'm sorry. I was like this week screwed me and so badly because once again he's got three top running backs and receivers again that are just going to sit on the bench all year. Even Zay Flowers on his bench all year is going to be insane.
Yeah,
Cameron,
Zay Flowers finally starting to come alive over the last couple of weeks. A couple of big games in a row because like he had a pretty abysmal season. He had one good game I guess early against Vegas, but who doesn't, right? Against the Raiders. But yeah, last couple of weeks, Flowers has looked like the wide receiver that someone drafted him to be. So yeah, I mean Cameron's team coming together here. Oh, look who just joined us. Speaking of the devil, Chris, how you doing, bud?
What's up, boys?
So I was giving you props earlier. Well, I guess I gave you some credit, even though you told me not to start Tracy. You told me to start James Cook, and I went against your advice. But yeah, I did tell them that I was consulting you on my start sit decisions, which worked out for me this week. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. Just driving home from work and realized that the pod was probably being recorded and wanted to stop in and say hi.
Yeah, man. You got it. You got any thoughts on our Vegas trip or the Raider game that you want to share with the group here?
No, just not really, except that the Raiders are ass.
Yeah.
Although I will say I've never been to a game where the refs were screwing one team harder than the Raiders. I mean, it was pretty atrocious. I will give you guys that.
Thank you. And for context, Chris is not a Raider fan. He's a Cardinal fan, so now you know that it wasn't just me being biased saying that the ref was wearing a Steeler uniform. The ref was absolutely on their team.
I did have some amount of money riding on the Raiders.
You did. That's true.
Yeah.
No, but despite that, I thought it was pretty clear. And I think there were someone was showing us some Reddit threads about the refereeing in that game too.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Speaking of bad,
it was pretty
your
bad.
Team, Chris, we've been knocking it pretty bad. I mean,
my team is so bad.
Dare Agunbawale this week. I don't know if I said that right. You had to start him at running back. He had 2 carries for 8 yards.
How many of those guys did you draft?
I can't even tell you. I mean,
Bowers in London.
Bowers in London, yeah.
and like London has been. I mean, I forget how he did last week, but the week before that, I think you guys mentioned in last week's pod. I mean, Vinny's kicker almost outscored him. So, that's how my season's going.
Well, London's played well. Like other than week 1, he's at 11, 12, 6, 21, 13. Like I think he's played really well other than week 1. But yeah, just the amount of plus signs on this team. Like Deontay Johnson has an injury designation. Stevenson didn't play this week. A-Chain has been out, even though he's on a bye. McCaffrey's still on IR. Neighbors didn't play this week. So, you've had a rough go, Chris. You've had a rough go this year, bud.
This is
Doc,
actually like a really good. So actually, earlier Mitch said that Austin's team would compete for a Super Bowl next year. Could you imagine if Chris and Austin just ran
Oh
it
no,
back next year with the
we're
same
not letting
exact
that happen.
teams?
That's a bad idea. That's not happening.
Look at Chris's bench. Like even Diggs just restructured his contract. He doesn't have a contract at the end of this year, so Tank Dell even could be like somebody good. But
Well, I mean, Tank Dell's
even
going to be good as long as Nico Collins is out. I mean, this is look at his stat line. The first game he gets to play without Nico Collins, right? Like before he was
yeah,
kind of middling. His first game without Nico
but
Collins, his highest targets of the season, highest catches of the season, and a touchdown. Now, obviously, the yardage wasn't great, so the touchdown kind of saved it. But like the fact that his targets and his catches went way up with Collins out, that's a big game.
yeah,
We're
these are probably like the only two teams that you could say I guarantee if they run it back next year because they're young, they're healthy. You run it back next year and they would be like strong Super Bowl contenders.
I mean,
And
saying this team is healthy
they're
is a stretch. I assume you're
they're
saying if they're healthy.
combined 2 for 10 this year, 2 and 10. It's just wild. Fantasy sucks.
it's week
rough.
6. It's week 6, and this is probably the 4th iteration of my team. Um, and Dari wasn't even on. I mean, I wasn't even thinking of a running back last week, and then I forget who it was, but I woke up and someone had an injury designation, and so I just had to pick up, I don't know, a random guy. I guess I should have picked up Sean Tucker.
Well, yeah,
shame
I
on
mean, you
me
couldn't
for
have seen
not
that
knowing he was
coming.
going to
Well,
go
you
for
should have picked up
$200
Alexander
for
Madison. You could have cheered him on at the game and been even more mad about that touchdown that got called back. Because Madison was.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. But I mean, I literally woke up, saw that I wasn't going to have a starting running back, just want to add a player, just found the next guy I could see, and then picked him up, just hoping that I wouldn't have to start someone who was benched or injured.
All right, fair enough. Let's see here.
Yeah,
Mitch-
leave it to
okay.
CBS Sports to have Dare Ogunwale at the top of the free agency running backs last week. That just goes to show how good they are at their predictions.
Yeah, it's especially when Mixon played, right? Like with Mixon out, okay, maybe because the week before he had 15 carries, right? But with Mixon playing, like he goes back to number 3. Also, he averaged 2 yards a carry on those 15 carries, so I guess I thought he'd be more of a receiving back. But yeah, when Mixon plays, how are you going to say this guy's going to get anything when he's third on the depth chart behind Mixon and Cam Akers?
Yeah, crazy.
All right, so Mitch, last week you acted as Vegas and gave us some lines on some teams, but you left some other teams out. Do you want to give us lines on some of the other teams now that you didn't?
We
didn't
can.
get last week?
I would like to also discuss potential trades in the NFL that could actually be like fantasy relevant or whatever. Because I think someone's gonna get a game changer coming up with some of these trades that are, because it used to be back in the day, most of the time they would never trade it. Trades never happened on, and then a couple years ago they did the Christian McCaffrey, I think, set things in motion or whatever year that was. But before that, there used to be never be trades, and now it's like a real fantasy discussion, or it's something for owners to keep in their head that like there could potentially be someone's second or third useless running back, like a Damian Pierce, going to a different team and all of a sudden being fantasy relevant, or as Alex doesn't want to hear, Cam Akers going to the Vikings, or we can do the over unders. It don't matter to me.
Let's finish the over unders and see if we have time for the
Yeah,
trades.
we need to over under.
Okay.
Because well, last week we did.
We'll take care of our fans.
So yeah, the fans want to hear it.
All right. Oh no. Oh, Vegas did get a little bit more grumpier in a week because it might have because Vegas thought maybe for a second here that it might have had too high of over unders. But everyone I gave it under.
Well, also Vegas last week, did it for a lot of the teams that we thought were contenders. Some of the teams that are getting over unders this week are teams that we weren't as high on.
And also, I didn't want to be mean, so I didn't want to give. The only bad team I did was Chris because I thought it would be funny. But
and it's great.
All right, we can do
over.
it.
So yeah.
Well, yeah, I think because Vegas Vegas wouldn't do their own team. Okay. I did give Mitch 2.5 last week, so he's already surpassed the odds that I gave him.
Yeah,
which is
beat Vinny's Vegas. That's for sure.
Highly disappointing.
All right, Mitch. So who are we starting with, Vegas?
Well, we can go. We'll start on a positive note. We go. We'll go with Luis, and I had Luis at I'm pulling up the notes right now. I had Luis, I think, at 6.5.
Ooh, 6.5 for a team that you said you really liked
Be,
when you were going over other. So I'm only saying that because every time you would go over someone else's win schedule, Luis's team was one that you would chalk up to an L on the over-unders, or a
no, I
possible
would
L.
chalk
So
up
it's
to a win.
interesting.
Well, and the
Win.
craziest part about so you're saying
I would
total
always
wins on
say
the
Miles'
season
team
six
is
and a
better
half?
than
Sorry,
Luis.
just
Yeah.
for clarity, Mitch, you're saying total wins on the season, right? Not over the next, right?
No, 6.5. Yeah. So
So he's got
I
to
had
win
him at
four
like
of the next. How many games? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 8 games left. He's got to win 4 of his next. He's got to go 500 over the last few games. Yeah, he's got a pretty rough schedule. I
Oh,
mean,
that's brutal.
I
he's got
liked
to he's got to
Luis's team
play
at the
he's got to
beginning,
play
but that was
Dad,
before
Mitch,
his QB.
Vinny, Matt, and I. I mean, that's 5 really challenging matchups right there. Sylvie is playing well right now, and then I think these two are probably the easiest matchups he's got. Gummy Bears and Team Dinosaurs, but depending on Jordan Mason's health, if Jordan Mason comes back, I like Miles' team a lot more, obviously, but with Mason's injury, I think that really hurts them. But yeah,
Well, and how about the fact that
go ahead.
McCaffrey is predicted to come back early November, possibly, which could be that Week 10 matchup against Chris. So that could change a lot of things. That's the thing. It's like that's Austin's team might not be good now, but I don't play Austin until Week 10 or 11. So it's like, dang, that stinks. Like, I wish I could get these teams as they're unfortunately not healthy.
But yeah, so
So,
his schedule's a
selfishly,
murderer's row. So let's look at hold on. So his schedule's a murderer's row, but let's look at his actual roster before we make any.
That's what I was getting at. So Devontae Adams could be instant help right away, and he could be starting Diggs, but Diggs could take it without Nico Collins getting the #1 coverage. Diggs might not be as good as people think. I'm not sure. Chase is going to be a stud. So what's he going to do all year? Guess between Adams and Diggs? I don't know if that's
Well,
as
he's
easy
also
as possible.
and also like don't sleep on Juju Smith-Schuster. Like I know that sounds funny to say, but like with Rashee Rice now out for season, Juju Smith-Schuster's value goes way up. I mean, the first game he plays where Rashee Rice isn't a factor, he gets 8 targets for 130 yards versus the other games he played, he had 1 target and 3 targets, right? So like, most quarterbacks, I know historically Mahomes hasn't been one of them, but most quarterbacks find a guy who is their guy and their #1 target, right? Mahomes didn't have one, it seemed, outside of Kelsey until last season. He finally picked a wide receiver, and that wide receiver was Rashee Rice. If your theory is correct, and they're going to keep resting Kelsey and not necessarily utilizing him as much as he used to, because they are having Rashee Rice run a lot of the routes that Kelsey used to run,
It's true.
Smith-Schuster might take that spot.
And he didn't have Darnold till this week. And it's very hard for me personally as a fantasy manager in this league to pick any team that's doing a QB carousel per week is going to produce a lot of wins. Kareem Hunt will also take a huge hit when Pacheco comes back. I just think so. Now it comes down to Darnold. Don't get me, it was a great pickup. He just added him yesterday. But now you're trying to say to
Mitch, you cut out there, bud.
Yeah, I lost your audio, Mitch.
All right. Well, while he works on getting it back, I get what he's going for. Yeah, I mean, there are some questions here. I mean, Darnold. Ironically, Mitch was about to bash Darnold, even though
act than
even though he's
Sam.
one
I
of the
don't.
bets on him. But Darnold
Say
has
what?
1 bad week and 4 good ones. So
Yeah. So
okay, you keep starting and stopping. I think you're still having audio issues. But yeah. So anyway, I like pieces of this team, but I think like Mitchell said, I think running back's gonna be an issue. Travis Etienne just has not been the guy everyone thought he was gonna be this year. Like I know he's injured now, but even before the injury, Etienne has not played well this season at all. I have him in another league. He's been pretty abysmal. 9, 11, 7, 6, 5. This is a guy you're taking to be your RB1 in your team. That's not RB1 numbers. Now Luis has another RB1 in Kamara, and that's great. And he's got receivers, and maybe Darnold keeps playing well. But he has no tight end. I think he's going to struggle at second running back. And I think a lot of the issue he's going to have is, does he start the right receiver? I think he has 2 good receivers every week. The question is, does he pick the right ones to start? And I just think with his schedule and with that juggling, that's going to be tough to do. He did post a meme on Facebook today talking about, all right, Devontae Adams, hush and get back in my lineup when they did the trade, which I thought was kind of funny. I don't remember exactly how it went. But yeah, so at the end of the day, I'm going to take the under just because I think winning 4 of his next 8 is going to be tough with his schedule and with having to figure out who starts and the running.
Is my internet working? Again?
Yeah, I can
Is
hear
it
you now.
back?
You just said, is your internet working?
Okay, so I don't know why my internet, but I hope all I want to say is a lot of my likeness of this team is predicated on a healthy Carr with Kamara. If Carr's not healthy, I think Kamara's a lot of me liking this team was based on Kamara is what I'm trying to say. And Kamara takes a huge hit without Carr, in my opinion. And I don't want to pick a team with a QB carousel, even though Darnold's a great pickup. But that's all I wanted to say about this one. Sorry.
All right, let's move on. Vegas, what do you got for us for the next one?
We go to Sylvie.
All right, let's go to Sylvie. We'll take a look at our lineup first. What is the line for serial killers? Currently 3 and 3.
6.5 again.
6.5. So they got to win 4.
And
of
that
their
was
next
last
games.
week too. I had it 6.5 as well. She won this week.
So she's finally going to start Trevor Lawrence. She traded for him and then kept him on the roster the entire time. She's finally going to actually have to start Trevor Lawrence this week. Evan Ingram is finally playing like Evan Ingram. He finally started playing football again. He had a great game. He did fumble the ball, but he had 100 yards receiving. She's carrying 3 tight ends. That's got to be a record. So she can drop a couple of those if Ingram's going to play. Start Raheem the Dream now that he's off his bye over Zamir White. Team looks a little better. Ironically, I've been bashing Caleb Williams a lot because I think he sucks. And he did for the first couple of weeks. But the last few weeks, he's thrown 7 TDs, only 1 pick. So we'll see if that can keep up. He's on a bye this week, but we'll see. Maybe Caleb Williams is coming together for her at the right time. But yeah, I mean, she's got some people playing well above their means right now. So the team is looking a lot better than I thought it did originally. This week's going to be kind of sketch because, like I said, she's got some buys and some injuries and stuff. But let's take a look at what her schedule... Oh, someone just disconnected. You guys there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was
no,
Chris.
Okay, cool. Let's take a look at her actual schedule then. And I can never remember where to find the schedule. There we go. And see what we think based on who she still has left to play. Okay, so she's already played Dad and Break. That's pretty big. So she's got Cameron, Chris, Dinosaurs, Avengers, Phoenix, and then our division. I mean, she's in a tough division. I gotta say that. So I mean, I think the biggest obstacle she has facing isn't necessarily all the teams she has to play outside of league play. I mean, I know she plays you two, and I'm kind of taking a shot at you there, but I just think the problem is her division is so strong right now that's going to be tough. Granted, I mean, I think the weakest team in our division right now as of this week might be mine because of all the injuries. But if they recover from injury, then I think our division's looking pretty strong. So yeah, I think it's a tall order for her to get 4 more wins. I mean, I think she can easily pick up, 1, 2. This will be a close match, potentially 3, depending on what the injuries and the status of Christian McCaffrey is. But then, she'd have to win 1 more of these 5. I mean, it's doable. I think it's much more doable for her than it was for the last team we handicapped. I think Sylvie's got a better shot at it than Luis based on the remaining schedule, just because she's already played some of the tougher teams. But I'm still probably leaning towards the under, just because I still think Caleb Williams is going to come back down to earth. If I'm wrong on him, then that changes my opinion, right? But if Caleb Williams comes back down to earth, I think I'm going to go the under. Vinny? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm probably going to have to take the under too. I took the under on Luis just because of his schedule, even though I do think his team has potential. I think this is an easier schedule with a team that has less potential. So I'm going to be kind of savage on this one and pick the under, even though I think there's some good pieces. It's just not it's hard to win in DoD if you don't have somebody hitting at every position, especially the quarterback position. And so it's hard to bank on Darnold. It's hard to bank on Caleb Williams. So and then if you can bank on those types of guys if the rest of your team is really, really good. And I don't think either one of them has really, really good on the rest of the team, unfortunately.
Mitch, you got any opinion, Vegas, or are you just doing the handicapping? Oh, Mitch's mic's muted now. So, it's going to be hard for us to move on to the next one when the guy who's giving us the handicaps is muted. So, Vinny, is there anything you would like to talk about while we wait to see if he comes back?
Yeah, put me on the spot on that one. I just think that, looking at the season as a whole, it continues to be, I mean, you've kind of talked about like the parity in between like the records and stuff. It's pretty crazy how many teams are hovering at that 3-3, 4-2 mark. We talk about strong teams, and it's interesting. I know I'm not going to sit here and say my division is the strongest, but we have 3 very strong teams in myself, Miles, and Break. And all of us we don't have a single winning record in our division. 3-3, 3-3, 2-4, 2-4 for Cameron. It's just a weird fantasy season, and I feel like I say that every year, but I just feel like the first 2 round players aren't hitting like they normally do. I don't think the success rates of rounds 1 and 2 players are hitting at the same rate that they typically do. I mean, look at all the wide receivers: CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, who's finally picking it up, but Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, AJ
So
Brown with
let's actually take a look
injuries.
at that right now, Vin. So I've got the draft. It shows the results right now, right? So like if you look at the draft, CMC he hasn't played, so obviously he's doing terrible. Let's move to Brees Hall is RB17. First, second running back drafted RB17. Bijan Robinson, running back 9. Jonathan Taylor, running back 13. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 12. Hill, wide receiver 38. It's not until you get down to Mitch at pick 7 do you get to someone who's actually at the top. Running back
And he's
3.
had his bye.
I'm sorry?
And he's had his bye already.
Right. Team Phoenix,
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts, quarterback 17. Professor Chaos, Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 22. And yes, there are buys involved, right? I will say that Amon-Ra, Jalen, Tyreek have had buys. Jonathan Taylor has been out on injury. So, like, I get that affects the stats, but it's still pretty jarring. Jamar Chase,
Agreed.
obviously a home run here. Kyron Williams, solid. Derrick Henry, amazing. Justin Jefferson's great. He's had a bye. He's still wide receiver 5. Jahmyr Gibbs. But then you start, Etienne, as I said. Etienne has not had his bye yet. Been terrible. Checo on IR. A.J. Brown, he's been out with injury. Josh Allen, QB5. But again, when you draft him here, you're drafting him as the second quarterback taken. You're hoping for more than QB5. Garrett Wilson, Austin complained about this. That's wide receiver 16 after back-to-back amazing weeks. So keep in mind, most of that comes from 2 weeks of worth of production, and he's still only top 16 after that. James Cook, he sat out a game, and still wide receiver 10. I think this pick was decent. Lamar's solid. Puka basically hasn't played. Demo's been hurt. Devon's been hurt. So yeah, rounds 1 and 2, there have been a lot more misses than there were hits. Not necessarily because their play has been bad. I mean, yes, with Etienne it has been, but I think a lot of it's just been, injury and opportunity has not been there for some of these guys. Like CeeDee Lamb, he's played every game. He's wide receiver 12. I was debating between him and Derrick Henry, and I took him just because I wanted to do something different and take the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy, and that's kind of blown up in my face because Derrick Henry's running back 1, CeeDee Lamb's wide receiver 12, right? So like that's just kind of that's how it works right now.
Hey,
right? So,
add that to your notebook, Mitch, when you're trying to predict what Alex is going to do with his draft pick next year. It's running back for sure.
Well, I figured he'd go running back this year as well.
you gotta keep him guessing. I took tight end once before too. You gotta keep him guessing. You can't let him know your strat every year.
I think this is funny. This is kind of fun to look at, just really quick. You want to know how you go 6-0? Look at what Nolan did at the turn here. I mean, that is how you start a season 6-0.
Yep.
That's Justin Jefferson is wide receiver 5 coming off a bye.
Picks in the draft, we liked it in the draft, and we certainly like it now. Especially Derrick Henry's playing like an absolute monster. Even his next 2 picks, right? Rashad White and Cooper Kupp, and like keep in mind his team is this good, and this guy's not playing. Like, let's not forget,
Yeah.
Cooper Kupp is out with an injury, and his team's still that good. That's pretty insane. Just the amount of value, that this team has. So we'll see. A lot of misses, that we thought were going to be hits due to injury or whatnot, but he's still crushing it. Anyway, now that Vegas is back, let's keep handicapping because we're running out of time here. So go to the next one there, Vegas.
We can go with who's left. I think it's just Cameron and Austin, I think, is just left.
Okay, so which one first?
Cameron I had at 7.5, and he lost this week, so this is going to be rough.
All right, so we had him
I
at
think
7.5.
I think he went from quietly, Alex, you had the 2 best duo running back combo in the league. I think in 1 week, which is very, this is not a wishy-washy thing in my mind. He took over the best running back duo out of any team, in my opinion. It was you. You're number 2 now. Sorry.
And would you say that duo is Joe Mixon and Tony Pollard, or are you considering Brees Hall as one of them?
Oh, it's Tony Pollard and Mixon, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
The only reason Brees Hall gets an increase in value is because of Hackett's no longer calling the plays. So I agree. I'm not necessarily sure. I never had a problem with Brees Hall's talent. It was always Hackett in that system. But I think Rodgers are still going to run the split back. I'm not sure. But yes, it's Pollard and Mixon.
Okay, sorry. I have to derail this entire conversation. I gave Sylvie flack for having 3 tight ends on her roster, which is crazy. Cameron has 3 kickers on his roster right now. He's got Eddie Pinheiro of Carolina, Harrison Butker of Kansas City, and Braden Neverson of Green Bay. Okay, I understand not wanting to drop Butker on your bye, right? Like, back in the day, you drafted Justin Tucker because you always thought he'd be the top guy, or Adam Vinatieri or whoever, and you kept that kicker through the bye. It was rare. Most people just change kickers in the bye week. You kept a couple of guys. I get that. So keeping Butker because you needed to pick up someone, I understand. But why in the world you have 3 kickers on your roster? One of them being a guy who is not even on a team anymore, right?
He's got two tight ends as well.
He played due to an injury, and then they've waived him, right? So he's currently rostering a kicker who's not on an NFL team as his third string kicker. That is insane.
He's got two tight ends.
Yeah, well, he's got the two tight ends on the same team. That I understood more, right? Like until Andrews was playing. Now, granted, he's starting the wrong one now. I think it's time to cut bait. Unlikely. I think that ship has sailed.
He has 3 kickers, 2 tight ends, and still has a better depth of running back and wide receiver than
That's what I was getting at. He has
Yeah.
5.
So anyway, I had to derail for a second, but yeah. So we do kind of like this team. I think his biggest issue, honestly, is wide receiver. I like he's got some wide receivers. I just don't know which ones are going to be the right ones, and he's going to have to play around with that. But let's take a look and see what his schedule is to make our decision. Sorry, I didn't have a way to not cough on the mic. I apologize. I was trying to figure that out and I couldn't. What's this team name again? Yakovlam? Okay.
Yakovlam.
All right, so here is his schedule. He's got Serial Killers, Chaos, Avengers, Sharks, Gummy Bears, Penguins, Phoenix, and Dinosaurs. And you had him at what, Mitch? 7.5. So he's got to win.
Yeah.
He's got to win 6. Yeah, it's just a no. 8 games left. He's got to win.
He's got the
6
best
of them.
team to do it. He's got such a good team.
He's got a good team, but he plays every team that we consider like a good team. He plays almost all of them over the next 8 weeks, right?
And the reason I put him at 7.5 is because 8 and 6 puts you in the playoffs. I don't think 7 and 7 gets you in. But if I put the line down to 6.5, would that change it? Or no? It'd still be under?
I really like Cameron's team, if we're being honest. Like, if Burrow keeps playing the way he's played over the last few weeks, even though he kind of had like a down week, he still had a 50-yard rushing touchdown apparently.
So
I mean,
if you go down to where he has to be 8 and 8, you're saying, so he's got to win 6.
No, 7 and 7. I don't
7
think puts
7.
you in the playoffs. Yeah,
so
but
you think,
that's why I did
5,
7.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of 8. I think that's much more doable. I think that's much more doable if he had to win 5 games. I think he can beat Sylvie. I think there's a chance that he beats me, depending on how buys shake out. I think he beats Gummy Bears. Break, if he's still got the injuries going on, I think that's a possible win because Break's team, again, is really injured right now. Same with Miles. We're kind of questioning that. So I think there's a world where he wins 5. I don't see him winning 6. I think there's just too many quality opponents. Because even when you look at the schedule, right, like Sylvie's peaking right now. Like her team is doing well right now. I think this week he's gonna get a win because he's got so many people on bye. But so I think I'll give him that one. But Matt's on a 3-game win streak. It's the best win streak in the league outside of me and my dad who haven't lost, right? Then he's playing you. You were the top scorer this week. Then he's playing me. If my guys are back from injury 3 weeks from now, which is very possible, who knows what happens there. I think this is a freebie. Sorry, Chris. Week 12, if Break's team is healthy again, that gives them time to get healthy. That's a tough matchup. Phoenix is a tough matchup. Miles is potentially a tough matchup depending on what happens with some of the guys on his roster. So I just think 6 out of 8 is a tall order for anybody, and especially for Cameron. I think 6 out of 8 is kind of a big ask, but we'll see. Like I said, he's got the pieces, so we'll see how that looks.
I think the one thing that this has made me realize is that the wild card is not coming out of our division this year. So I think you can basically just chalk that up to it's going to be the winner.
You guys are going to beat up on each other.
I mean,
it's
going to. Yeah, we got to play the games, right? You never know what happens
until
you play the games. So.
Well, we all still have hard schedules remaining. We play a lot of the good teams in the league, and then we end the season just beating each other up. Like every loss at that end of the season is so critical. So if one of us goes 1 and 2, it's game over, right? So.
Right. That's what I was trying to say at the very beginning of this with my questions. I first started it out, I said it was a 2-parter, but it ended up being a 10-parter. But first off, do me or Matt have a better chance of catching Nolan or Alex, respectively? And then on that, who's the best 3-3 team? Because when you take those two concepts and put it all together, I'm getting in my mind that you guys are going to beat up on each other, and it does look like Alex's team's better. So there is a world where I can come, Nolan and I can come into the wild card. I know it's about me, but that was my original intent with those two questions was I think there is a possibility that you guys have such even teams, whereas opposed to no offense to Chris and Austin, who by the way we established, run it back next year, and that we're not allowing that to happen because I'm not getting my butt kicked next year. But I think because of the disparity of the divisions, I might have a chance this year. I might.
No, I mean if that's the way that we're phrasing it, I think your team has the best shot at a wild card. I
Okay.
really do. I think it's just set up better for
We're
a wild
running low
card.
on time. Let's handicap the last team here. So let's go to Austin.
Austin, 5.5.
Oh, okay, 5.5.
Five
So
and a half.
let's
So
see, what are
he
the
needs to
odds
go
of that?
500 the rest of the year.
Five
What
and a
did I give
half.
Chris? I gave Chris 6.5. Yeah, I gave him 5.5. 5.5. I gotta
Well,
open
no,
my
five
phone
and a half.
again.
He's got to win five. He's got to win five of the next eight. So he's
Yeah,
playing break
five
at
and a
the
half.
right time. He's potentially playing Miles at the
Oh,
right
his
time, depending
schedule
on
is
Jordan
so
Mason.
hard.
Oh
Uh,
no.
he gets to play Chris. So there is. I don't know. I think there's a chance. I think there is a chance at 5.5 here for Austin. 5.5 wins, not five. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I think bye weeks are going to come into it, right? When are the buys? But he's playing Break at the right time. Break's still injured right now. Miles just lost his running back one. That's a good time to play Miles. I've got some people injured. We'll see what happens with that. Then I think this is a tough matchup. This is a tough matchup. Tough matchup. Chris's team, like I keep saying, and I'm sorry to Chris, but I just don't think this team's very good this year. And then you, so I mean, I think there's a chance here. I'm not like locking it in because Austin's team has been on the struggle bus. Let's see if I can get back to his roster. But they played really well this week. And when you look at the roster that he's got, Stroud is great. Harris has been playing well. Wilson's been playing well. He's got a decent defense, kicker, all that jazz. Swift has played well. He's on bye right now, and we'll see what happens with Chubb. So I think there's a chance. If I had to bet on it right now, I would bet the under. But of all the ones I've been picking, this one would not surprise me if he did hit the over.
Yeah, I'm going to take the over too just because I like this team moving forward. It is crazy to start the season 1-5 with losses to Chris, Sylvie, Luis, Cameron, and have the rest of the. And that's no shade towards any of those teams. It's just the rest of the teams standing are pretty strong. I think where Austin can have a lot of fun this year, and we've all played this role before. Austin can knock a lot of teams out of the playoffs moving forward.
Yeah, he
I
can
don't
play
think his
spoiler
team's good
for
enough
sure.
to. Yeah, I don't think you start at 1-5 and get there. It's not unheard of. Like you could technically win out, but he's going to play spoiler. I think his team's going to get healthy. I think his team's only going to get better. Um, yeah, it's. I know that Mitch disagrees, and that's why I just think that if Tua comes back, I mean Tyreek is Tyreek. I mean you said it before the season, Mitch. You don't not pick Tyreek until he proves otherwise, and I still don't even know if we can
Right.
make that conclusion this year, based on the fact that Tua's been out. So Reek is an animal if Tua is playing, and if Chubb comes back as just half himself, it solves a lot of his running back problems. So yeah, I think he's got a sky's the limit type roster
All right,
moving
boys, we're
forward.
gonna have to wrap this up because I know we're past the hour mark here, and some people have got to go. So any final thoughts, parting thoughts from either you fellas?
Yeah, I got a quick parting thought, real quick. I think whoever to our viewers, whoever is listening, I think if you can go ahead and do some real thought researching of who can possibly be traded, I think there's going to be some fantasy value. So I'll give you like a off the wall, kind of a deep one, really fast. I think Mike McDaniel's in 2021 was no, I think I know, was the offensive coordinator for the first time for the Niners. And who did they draft? Trey Lance. Who do the Dolphins need right now as a QB? I'm going to go out and say Trey Lance is going to go to the Dolphins and be a massive fantasy impact. I think if you can pick the actual correct, wild theory that I just came up with, but actually be correct on it, like Amari Cooper going to the Bills, I think you can win the league or change your league around this year or change your season around.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it's whatever running back ends up in Dallas. There's no way that Dallas thinks they don't have a running back problem at this point,
That's
or
a
a
good one.
second wide receiver. I think, or if a second wide receiver goes to Dallas.
That's a really
Um,
good one. The running back in Dallas. Wow.
so we'll see who that is. I mean, it would be kind of funny if the Titans are just like, wow, Tajay Spears isn't as good as we thought he is, and ship him to Dallas and just kind of swap Pollard and Spears. But I
Or
could
like
see like
Dameon
a
Pierce.
yeah, I could see like a Damian Pierce, a Chuba Hubbard
Oh,
type
yeah.
situation.
I heard
So
Thielen to the Chiefs as well. Go on, Alex. Do you have any?
As far as trade rumors, no, nothing that I've been really following. Like I said, as I talked about with Vinny earlier, I've had a pretty whirlwind of a trip. I flew from Alabama to California. As soon as I landed, I hopped in a car and drove from California to Vegas. Then had a blast in Vegas. Obviously, woke up Monday morning in Vegas, drove to Ontario, hung out with Brake and tried to help babysit Audrey, even though she didn't really want to be around me. So it kind of worked out because Brake had to do all the work. But I was there, and then at midnight that night, went to the airport to catch an overnight flight coming back to Alabama. So I've been kind of out of it. Slept other than working today. I slept all yesterday basically to try to catch up. So yeah, not really on point with a lot of stuff. Just wanted, all my notes and things are about our league and what happened this week. So no trade rumors for me to follow up on right now. But I don't want the Cam Akers trade to happen because I want my boy to get healthy and play. I will point out that yesterday they had him expected to score like 8 points, assuming he was going to play, and today Aaron Jones is expected to score 0. So I don't know what's going on with that, but I am worried that he may miss this week. So we'll see.
Yeah, I have one more closing remark just so I can put it out into the universe. If anybody ever hears that I am planning on attending a Raider game, please call me and tell me to call the suicide hotline number and not to do it. So I am invoking the rule that unless the Raiders have a game ticket under $50, I am not going to a game ever again.
I mean, I still think we run it back next year.
Yeah, we'll run it back at like Circa Sport Club, like the pool day club thing.
Well,
so.
Hey, in our defense, we did tell Brake, we were on board with Brake selling the tickets and we pocketing it. But yeah, that's got to be our show for today. Thank you guys so much for listening. Shout out to Brake for setting that up. I had an absolute blast, even though the Raiders suck.
It's a great time.
So thank you.
I'd do it again.
Fantastic time. Thanks to everyone who was on the trip, part of the trip. Dad, Chris, and even Jimmy, who's not part of the pod. But yeah, thanks everybody. We're out of here. We'll catch you guys later.
Peace.